Hello and welcome to Dateline New Haven on WNHH, New Haven's home for community radio. I'm Paul Bass, inviting you to look behind the headlines on the stories that make New Haven tick. This is a man who somewhat quietly has made New Haven tick for a while, and now is looking to do it in a much more public way. He's an explorer. His name is Liam Brennan. He's exploring officially a run for mayor, which means he's out there talking to people, getting money, getting support, and probably lead up to officially running a campaign for the Democratic nomination for mayor. Liam Brennan, welcome to Dateline New Haven. So nice to see you.
Great to see you too, Paul. Good afternoon. Thanks for having me.
Have you ever been on the station before?
I have never been on the
That's
station before.
That's interesting because you do so many things with housing and criminal justice. I'm kind of surprised we've never had none of our hosts have had you on.
This is the first time, and I'm pumped to be here with you.
Well, welcome. So, are you also pumped to run for mayor?
No, I'm not officially running.
You're exploring.
I'm exploring.
Which I think is one of the most weaselly words of the political lexicon.
I don't know what to tell. I don't know.
Because like you're doing, there's certain rules that you say you're not officially candidate, that you don't do certain things, but you're not all the way in. You know what I mean? Like some people bypass that stage.
They do. I mean, this is officially, as they say it at the State Elections Enforcement Commission, to test the waters and see how things are going. And so that's just what I'm doing right now. And how's it going? I'm enjoying it.
Well, I mean, it's not weaselly if you really mean it. Like, are you not necessarily definitely running for mayor?
If everything's proceeding as right now, that's the plan, that I will be running for mayor. But I'm just,
you want to make sure you're not jumping into a pool that ends up being laced with arsenic or something.
Something like that. Yeah.
So what's it been like? How's it going right
It's
now?
been great. I mean, I think, even when I'm tired, even when I'm down, getting out and being able to talk to people is really, really fantastic. I mean, honestly, I come home after talking to folks and I'm just very energized and very excited about hearing what people have to say, hearing what they think about New Haven, hearing what they think about where we are. I'm loving it.
We were talking about that before on the air because that's true for us reporters too. Sometimes we get worn down by some of the controversial stories or the government meetings, and then when we go out and actually just talk to people, you always get new energy. You're revived. You see the goodness in people. The people are basically good. We have a great city. They care about it. Even when we're talking about challenges, we're kind of in the challenges together, and there's even a fun in trying to make our communities better together.
Absolutely. I mean, I think one of the things about New Haven is that it's so civically oriented and so many people are involved in doing so many different things. It's really, really great to hear about each person's little niche.
Everyone's got an idea for how
everyone's got an idea.
And every Yaley's a walking 501c3 to save the world. But everyone at every level has sort of been in a room somewhere once when they said, this is how we're going to fix poverty or make streets safe or combine neighborhoods to work together to give kids stuff to do or make schools better,
Exactly. And they really love it and they're really passionate about it. And I love that, I think, Paul, the work you do, the work that's been done here at the Independent is such a great part of that as well. It's a way a lot of communities around the country, we don't have that. We don't have local journalism that focuses on those really everyday activities that makes a place a place. And this is one of the things too, that it really
best news city around. I learned that young as I never left. So Liam, why do you want to be mayor of New Haven?
Paul, my kids have been in the public schools for 8 years. And at their school, pretty much every year since we've been in there, we have lost a teacher mid-year. My kids have lost teachers multiple years.
So even before the whole COVID thing?
Even before the whole COVID thing.
And they go to Edgewood, right?
They go to Edgewood.
Which is considered one of the better schools in town.
We're having a great experience. I mean, it's a great school. But our system has not been able to keep teachers. And what I'm seeing is that I don't see a vision for our education system. And it's something that's been frustrating for years. It's been going on for years and nothing has been changing in that realm. Also this year we had police officers leave a local man paralyzed, while at the same time we've had increased gun deaths in our city, and we don't have a vision for reforming and changing our justice system at the municipal level. It has been far too long that we really haven't implemented changes that address gun violence.
So what's your vision for schools? What would you bring?
I think we need to look at our school system and ask, what do our schools deserve? What do we expect and what do we hope for our school system, for our students, and then go out and try to implement that. So, for example...
you didn't say anything there, by the way. You didn't tell us anything different we're not doing.
No, well, we're not putting in a highline vision of what our big long-term goals are. And for example, do we think our students in our schools should study in lower class sizes similar to the class sizes in other towns? Is that a yes or no?
Our sizes are bigger?
Our sizes are bigger.
What do you think about that? Given a teacher.
Can I give you one more thing too? Yeah. Okay. Also, similarly, do we think we should have universal pre-K in the school system like we do in other towns, like has been shown to be one of the most...
we do.
we don't have universal pre-K. I mean, my kids couldn't get into pre-K
Oh, yeah,
in the New
slots are
Haven
competitive at Mayo.
Yeah, no, you got to go into a lottery. You don't get in. You don't
So
know
you
where
do
you're
that
going
with
to go.
question marks. What's the declarative
So
statement?
the
Should we
thing
have
is-
smaller sizes? Should we have universal pre-K?
I think we should. I
So
think
you
we
say
should.
yes in both those.
The answer there is yes. And then the first step to getting there is saying that these are our priorities. This is what we want and hope from our school system, and then work backwards. And then cost that. What does that cost? And then
And it
come
obviously
up with a
costs
plan.
more.
That obviously costs more. Then come up with a plan to go through with it.
So those are specifics, and I was bugging you for specifics here. I know you haven't even declared yet. In terms of an overall vision, what's key? Why are we losing teachers more than what might be the national average? Why are schools really out of control now? Even at Edgewood, which is considered one of the better schools, they have a strong principal. Parents are very involved. Even there, the kids have been bouncing off the walls, and they had those special kind of days to try to help them chill out a little bit. And you had the teacher who through the desk was actually a great guy and was being attacked. I mean, the schools are kind of going bonkers.
I don't know that the schools are going bonkers.
Have you heard
but
about
it's tough.
Metro?
I have heard. I have lots of friends who work at Metro. I have heard about some of the difficulties at Metro and elsewhere. We've all come through a very tough time. We've all come. The post-COVID world is like a very, very different world. Or even just getting used to kind of going back to what is somewhat normal is tough for everyone. So I don't think our schools though are out of control, but I do think we need more than just like these short-term fixes or short-term issues that we're trying to address, and really think about like the system as a whole. Like, what do we want and what do we hope for? And for example, like when I started at the Connecticut Veterans Legal Center, when I used to be the executive director there, when I took it over as ED, we were running a 6-figure deficit. Our attorneys were the lowest paid legal attorneys in the state. And even though healthcare was one of our number one issues, we could not provide healthcare to our employees' families. And the board was like, we want to expand and we want to be a competitive employer. How do we do that? And it was clearly obvious we were not going to do that unless we changed the culture there, unless we had a goal of paying competitively, providing healthcare to people's families.
So how did you get the money?
But we set out a vision. It's basic strategic planning. We set out a vision that we were going to pay our employees competitively within ideally 3 years, that we were going to provide healthcare to our employees' families so that we can be a competitive employer, and that we were going to expand. And in 3 years, we were running a 6-figure surplus. All our employees
Where'd
qualified.
the money come from?
We went out, we raised grants, we got contracts, we kind of pitched expanded services, and we were able to bring that in.
And this is actually something that very much impressed me when you were considering running for mayor 4 years ago and were thinking hard about the issues. You had thought about revenues.
Mm-hmm.
All right. First of all, some people will tell you it's not about money. Like with the schools, we get a lot of money. We have a lot coming with ARPA, but we actually, if we're teaching kids not to read, I don't know where you stand on this about like phonics and
the science of science of reading. Well, I mean, there's 2 things there. There's like money and the science of reading.
Right. There's not money. Teaching kids not to learn. So if you give them more if you give them more money and teach them the old method of cluing by looking at pictures to figure out words, they actually have a harder time learning to read.
Yeah. I think teachers are teaching phonics on the side because they know it works. And I know that's happening. But I also do hear my kids coming home and singing songs about how do you find, what's going on in a sentence? You look at the clues, and I'm just like, it makes my head want to explode because the science of reading and phonics is a real thing. And why we've taken so long to catch up to the rest of the country is infuriating.
Well, what do you think about that? Why is that?
Because we're not setting out standards and goals.
Well, just so our listeners know, there's something called balanced literacy and structured literacy. And that for a long time, for decades, people, very goodwill, very smart people said the way you teach is a whole bunch of ways of teaching read because people learn differently. Look for clues, like what does a sentence look like? What does a word look like? What is a picture telling you it is? And then more than a decade of brain science research has proved that, except for a very small number of kids, almost everyone is learning not to read. Poor kids, rich kids. The rich kids are getting tutors. The poor kids aren't, because that makes it harder if they're not learning a bigger diet of phonics. New Haven was the last holdout in Connecticut. Even the woman who designed that curriculum, made her whole career, has renounced it. We haven't. Why is that? What does it say about New Haven, and what does that have to do with you running for mayor?
I think it shows a lack of vision at the leadership level for New Haven. And I think we see that lack of vision because we have teachers out there who are fighting for this. Teachers are showing up at the Board of Ed hearings, at the Board of Alder hearings, saying that we need to move to structured phonics, science of reading types of literacy. Sarah Levine, who lives around the corner from me, she's been out there beating the drum a bit. A number of other teachers have as well. And that's something that is coming up from our own teaching system, and the whole kind of administrative apparatus of the city government is immovable. They're not doing anything about it. And this is what the frustrating thing I see.
What would you do as mayor? I guess you'd be on the board of ed and you would appoint board of ed members.
Yep. And I think the really important thing there is laying out like goals and visions and saying, this is what we want to do. And then having the superintendent really going forward and doing that. And so what we need to do is move to more structured literacy.
Okay, we're talking to Liam Brennan, who's exploring, quote unquote, legal terms, little TM in the corner, the run for mayor
Not my trademark.
As a Democrat, right?
Yes.
Liam, let's tell people who you are. Where'd you grow up?
I grew up in Stamford, Connecticut.
How long you been in New Haven?
I moved here in 2004. So
What brought you here?
I came here for law school.
Yale Law?
I did go to Yale
Oh,
Law.
so you're smart. Because I
don't know about
Yale
that.
undergraduate isn't the same thing as Yale Law School. Law school is like you become the president of the Senator or something, you know.
Well,
It's very hard. It's very hard to get in there.
I felt very lucky. I felt it was hard. I felt very lucky to get in there. I got an amazing financial aid package. I didn't have to pay a thing to go there.
Really?
Yeah, really. Like,
Wow.
It was incredible. It was tough, man. I felt so out of place. Like I've never
Why?
felt so weird and so out of place.
Did you grow up in an elite family or?
No, I grew up in a working class neighborhood, Cloden Road in Stanford. If you want to check it out.
What road?
Cloden Road. If anybody, or
How do you spell that?
Rochelle Avenue, Culloden.
What-
But
what-
Rochelle Avenue most of the
What
time.
did your parents do?
My mom was a teacher. My dad was a civil servant for the state of New York. If you take Metro North, you run right behind our house.
How do you sleep with the house? Trains go by your house. Seriously.
No, it's tough. It's tough. I mean, we moved out. My dad lost his job when I was in first grade, and we moved. My parents couldn't keep the house then, so we moved into the basement apartment of one of their friends' houses for a while. Before then, we moved by Stanford Hospital on Rochelle Avenue. But a lot of my work is on housing advocacy, and that had always been a very formative experience for me. That the basement apartment that we moved into was an illegal apartment. Zoning
How old
made
were
it. I was going into second grade. So, and I really remember this moment, like we were there was a step, we had two floors in our house, and my mom set me down on the stairs and saying things like pink slip and, dad doesn't have a job and we're going to
What had he been doing for the state?
He worked in people with mental disabilities and group homes. And there've just been, a bunch of layoffs.
And how many siblings did you have?
I had one little sister.
Well, that must have been hard for you at that age.
It was, they were, she's a positive woman. She's 81 now, and she's just like.
Where did she teach?
She taught in Stanford Public Schools.
What grade?
She taught English as a second language. She taught, then she became a guidance counselor, which was, dude, this was
tell
a
me
crazy
about this illegal
experience.
apartment. So you're in a basement apartment for you.
Yeah, it was just for a couple of months, but basement apartment. And it wasn't until later that my mom told me, we're not really supposed to talk about that. We're there. But it was like such a lifesaver for us at this moment where we needed like a real help. And this is what we call naturally affordable housing. And the fact that it is something accessible to families that can give them a place to live is something we should be really trying to create and celebrate.
So what happened
in
after
cities.
those few months?
They were able to like get themselves together. He got a job. We were able to kind of get a house
where'd he get a job?
on back in New York again. I can't remember if he went back to the state at this point. He went to some nonprofits after a while that did the same thing. Ran
And
group
is
homes.
that when you moved next to the railroad line?
No, railroad beforehand. Then by Stanford Hospital afterward.
So Liam, tell me where that brings you. The question of zoning. I'm going to put it on the table where
yeah,
my
sure.
bias is. Not that my bias matters. I'm an extremist on zoning.
Okay.
I think that when I hear your story or I hear about when they didn't let the woman do the crafts factory and lumbar sheet behind her house, I think that there's no reason to have any zoning except for health and safety, and like not have kids grow up next to a strip bar and not have some pollution going into your window. Why do we need zoning about where you can put an apartment or anything like that?
So is a strip bar health
I'm saying
and
if
safety?
there's health and safety.
Is that health and safety? That's safety, I guess you're saying?
Yeah. That's a good question. But I think that there are certain kind of extreme examples
these
where you want to
extremes,
protect
yep.
kids, protect families, protect your health. But outside of that, why do we say where's a store or where you can put an apartment, a basement, where you can, how many what it should look like on what materials you can use, if you can have a store with apartments over it or not, or
I totally agree. I totally agree that we overzone. I do think that communities should be able to come together and kind of like think about what they want their city to look like or how they want to construct it. And that one of the ways we do that is through zoning. So I don't think there's a total
Well, in any case,
no place for zoning.
What do you take out of your experience? You
Okay.
said it was a
Yes,
experience
I
you'll
take
never
out of my
forget.
experience that we need our zoning is way too restrictive. Even in New Haven, it's exclusionary. It makes the cost of housing go up, and it keeps people from like access.
We did do
times,
ADUs, adjustable dwelling units, the mother-in-law
Yep.
apartments, which sort of make what you think illegal. But it's so funny neighborhood, Liam, because you have extremists like me, but then when you do that fun thing of talking to people, you see that life's more complicated. So
Totally.
in some neighborhoods like Goatville or Westville, it makes a lot of sense. Why can't you just add another apartment in the back? There's plenty of land, no one minds. Why can't you like make housing more affordable? But then you go on the hill on some of the side streets there near, let's say, Clemente School or something, and it's so narrow and there's so many cars, and some of these people actually need a car to work. You can't park anywhere, and they're hearing like everything that's being said in the kitchen and the next door, so they don't want you to say you can build on extra apartments.
I mean, I think that's why it's important to kind of engage communities on this and talk.
But take a stand here. Your experience, what should have been done? How should our zoning change so that your family shouldn't have had to whisper where they're living?
I mean, not just my family. Any families. There needs to be more housing. Like, we do not have enough housing, and relaxing our zoning rules is part of the way. We need
Which kind of rules?
Can we just say we also need public investment in affordable housing? So this is, there's like out there, and so I'm trying to speak to everybody out there as well.
Okay, so first go with zoning. What zoning would you relax? Density?
Yeah, I would relax density. I would relax parking requirements. These are things that can be done kind of immediately and easily to allow
Not
for...
easily when neighborhoods get mad.
Well, no, not when neighborhoods get mad, but you gotta, work with people and talk to people. I think most people are very sympathetic.
And what about like?
I was gonna say most people are very sympathetic to, housing for people is more important than housing for cars, and also that we know that like parking requirements drive up the cost of housing. Parking requirements, you can choose to have parking space, people can make that choice, and they don't have to. Put an
And what
ADU
about
behind
legalizing? Now, obviously, safety is a concern. Like when they shut down Dagger Street and those apartments, that was a few months before the ghost ship in Oakland. So all the people who are kind of outside the mainstream, might be independent type people saying it's terrible. Artists were living there. You shut down this former factory where they were living, but in fact, there was no legal way. There was no way to get out in a fire. And after they shut that out, and this landlord was soaking them for all this money illegally, and then ghost ship in Oakland, the same kind of place, all these people died when they had concerts, just the way they did. So there is a reason to not just let people live anywhere.
Oh, absolutely, absolutely,
so
Paul.
Give me a little concrete for me here about like ADUs. Are you talking about? What are you talking about?
ADUs, more multifamilies, relaxing side setback requirements, all sorts of things. There are tons of properties around New Haven, like empty lots that used to hold homes, that we cannot rebuild homes, the same homes that used to be there, rebuild homes on those properties. If you go to the corner of Chapel...
They've been grandfathered with the evil zoning.
Yep. If you go to the corner of... And you guys wrote about this, but the corner of Chapel and the Boulevard, we had an office with a multifamily home above it on that corner there. It's now a parking lot because the new zoning will not let you rebuild. Those are 4 homes for families that they could live in. Our vacancy rate is less than 2% in the city.
As a mayor, can you change the zoning?
Absolutely, you can.
How?
I mean, you do need to engage,
I've
got a plan for this.
Okay, tell me that.
I mean, you do need to go through, if you want to permanently change zoning, you need to go through zoning reform. And so you'll have to, change the ordinance.
Which we are doing.
Which we are doing. And we would have to go through the Board of Alders to do that. I do think facing an environmental crisis, which the Board of Alders has declared, you do have crisis powers. And the environmental crisis, we want to reduce local emissions. What's the biggest thing that reduces local emissions? Infill housing. Studies have shown that infill housing is the biggest policy change.
And that's taking vacant land and building it.
And that's taking vacant land and building it so people can live closer and live there. It's the biggest step you can take as a policy to reduce emissions. And if you have an emergency powers to do that, you can temporarily lift the zoning rules to allow that to happen.
We're talking to Liam Brennan, who's exploring, which means he's running for mayor, but we won't have to say that legally, right? And he's here on WNHH Dateline New Haven talking about his campaign. And I keep interrupting you because it's so interesting to talk to you about ideas. I've actually always felt that you're a person who is focused on a lot of ideas and policy, but I interrupted your life trajectory story. You came to New Haven because you did all these things that tie into these issues. So you went to law school. You stayed here after law school?
And I went to D.C. for 3 years.
What'd you do?
I joined the Department of Justice. I got into the honors program at the Department of Justice, and it's like how you get to go in right out of law school. And so I got to go in immediately, but I had to go to D.C. for a few years.
What'd you do?
So I was in the fraud section at the criminal division, and
you're a prosecutor?
I was a prosecutor.
Oh, that must have been great.
It was crazy. It was crazy.
I feel like when you're doing that kind of, especially with a corporate fraud.
Yep.
My guys, how do you even begin?
I mean, I did
when
Enron
99%
cases. I worked
business
on.
of cheating.
Yeah, no, I mean, it was a chance to take on some of like the biggest corporate titans.
Who'd you do?
Two executives from Enron, T-Mobile was bribing officials in, well, they wouldn't say they were actually bribing officials, but they officials in Eastern Europe. There was some fraud on USAID. We had people who stole USAID food and were selling it and building themselves estates. And so this was like, it was amazing. It was an amazing opportunity. It was also an opportunity to like kind of see the belly of the beast and see the bad side of things as well. And I remember, I mean, one of the first cases that I had was I think it was a sergeant in the Army who was taking bribes from Afghan officials to award them contracts, trucking contracts. It was a really sad case. You know, in the end, the guy's girlfriend stole all his money and she spent it on somebody else. But after the man was sentenced, the woman who did public relations for the DOJ was like, "Oh wow," came up to me and said, "Oh wow, that's a great sentence. You never, get a sentence like that." And it was dark, man. Like it was like the first. I mean, it was just like so obvious. Like
It was about winning a sports round, thinking
Yep.
about the human cost of life.
it's human cost of life. Like that is the way
That is
people
his thing
in
about-
those roles.
Law is so much like sports.
That it's
Lawyers.
like the only way you can kind of prove, or a way that you prove you've been successful, or any way you keep score on yourself and prove that you're doing a good job is like the length of a sentence. Like that really dropped a pit in my stomach off the bat. And so, and part of the reason I wanted to go into that was kind of like to fight those trends. But it's there. And so it was so in that sense, it was all of these things. It was overall a really, really amazing experience.
So then where did you go after that?
I came right back here. I mean, really wanted to come back here.
Why?
I loved it. So as I was saying before, like I got to law school, I felt so out of place. I mean, people, I was working in I worked at Playwright here. I worked back at Tegean in Stanford. And like my classmates would be like, kind of look at me, oh, like you have a job. That's quaint. And it's so weird. Like I thought I knew, wealthy people growing up, like I am, and like I was familiar with this experience. But even like the rich girl that I knew, like she had a job on the side too. She worked in like a paper store. But like this was like a whole nother world. And so I felt, and I didn't feel like I belonged or was worthy to be there. At the same time, New Haven like opened up its arms to me, and I felt like
that's exactly
I loved being here. It was so great.
When I went to Yale undergraduate in the 70s, I felt like I never belonged. It was the weirdest thing. And then New Haven was like my refuge.
It was a refuge, yeah. And like, I
loved the city.
Yeah, I volunteered at Junta, and I was doing work out there and just getting involved in the city. It was just such a dynamic place. So I wanted to come back.
You back.
So I had a 3-year commitment that I had to fill in D.C. Just as I was filling the 3-year commitment there, a position opened up doing the same thing up here in the U.S.
Attorney's Office. So what role did you have here?
So I was in the financial fraud and public corruption section here at the U.S. Attorney's Office.
Was that under Kevin O'Connor?
Nope. Kevin, it was under David Fine first, and then Deirdre Daly.
Oh, good bosses.
AKA the best boss in the world.
Yeah, she was great.
Yeah.
So what kind of cases did you work on there?
So
Rowland case, right? The Governor Rowland case?
I was lead prosecutor in the Governor Rowland's second case.
Right.
His
Roman,
second case.
We used to have Roman numerals.
Yes.
Rowland
Part 2. Rowland Part 2.
Well, what'd you learn from that?
You will remember, okay, what did I learn from that one? A lot of people think that, that's my biggest Hotline case. Everybody wants to talk about the Rowland case. And it was tough. It was, very high profile. But it wasn't like legally the toughest case, when compared to some other cases that we had to do. But it was a clean government.
That's when he got one of the candidates, I think, in Litchfield County, who was running for Congress, to hire him as a consultant.
They were paying him through a shell company that was connected to her husband's a healthcare company because they didn't want it to be public, but they wanted his power to go out and get her.
That was almost like a sad follow-up to Roland 1. Roland 1 was like they caught him all these years. He was flying high. He had the contractors getting no-bid contracts and building him cottages and paying money on the side, and his colleagues were burying gold in the ground, remember? And they had an LLC with his name. But the second one was pathetic. He came out of prison, And he did it again for chump change. I mean, that was sad.
Well, the thing is, he did it for chump change. He also tried it the cycle before with a different candidate.
I know. It's like, why would he want to go back to prison?
I don't know, but the man was also earning like $500,000 a year. I don't understand it. It was just crazy.
He just couldn't help himself.
He just could. I don't know. I don't want to pass judgment on.
You weren't a psychologist. You were
I'm
a
not a
prosecutor.
psychologist. This needed to come to light. And what I did learn from that case is it almost died a million times. But we just kind of kept following the evidence and kept talking to people.
But now you want to be a chief executive.
Yep.
How do you make sure you're not the person to be prosecuted by the next Liam Brennan?
You just gotta be honest. That's what you
But
gotta do.
it's
It's not that hard. It's not that hard.
If I were ever in public office, which I'll never be, I think I might go to prison. Because when I look closely at cases I'd written about, people, like one of the most corrupt people I ever covered was a really good guy and always helped people, did his job well, and it was easy for his boss to solve a problem and get something done with him. And he thought it's kind of a win-win. He makes a little money on the side. Obviously, that part's dirty. But he'd also do some other stuff that was kind of dirty because it kind of got the job done. And I think when you're in office, it's so much harder than when you're running for office to actually accomplish something that you know is good. And sometimes the way you get it done is, okay, first you appoint someone to a commission because they'll vote for you at the convention. Well, no money changed hands, and that lets you put your policy through that you think. And it gets to be a slippery slope. I don't think it's as easy as people think to stay out of prison if you're in public office.
Well, that's scary.
So you're still exploring. You could always back out.
I think it's easier, than you're making it sound. I mean, when you see the money changing hands, or when you say, like, I'm going to do this, I'm going to do this.
But it's not always that
that
often. It's no bid contracts. It's often finder fees. The person who helps. Well, remember there was a guy who was getting all these development contracts 20 years ago, and the guy who struck the deal would advise someone to go to the insurance company, and then he was making money from the insurance company to find people. Okay, you're saying
I think people,
if they're prosecuting Roland, you don't think you're going to be up there on the stand.
I think if they have an inner compass and they have people that they talk to, then people can avoid going to prison. But I do hear your point, and I think one of the things we saw that was closest to that point, I mean, the Nicole Jefferson case was one where I handled that case as well.
That was the city CEO of the city who had a non-for-profit she was running out of her same office and getting donations from the people she was regulating. Not her fault. It was set up by her bosses. But it was an inherently corrupt arrangement. Not that she was corrupt, but you guys let her off.
Well, she didn't do anything illegal. I mean, based on anything that we could see, But that was a situation. What I'm using that as an example of, that was a situation where the whole system started moving against the woman and was going to ground her down.
But there was someone running for mayor she was part of who was actually orchestrating a way of seeing that case where something that was so obviously wrong, not by her, was defended and given a pass by the U.S. Attorney's Office. How can you, when you're running, if you're the mayor and you have a council of equal opportunities, are you going to allow out of that office a nonprofit run that's funded by the people who you're overseeing through donations?
I do not have any plans to do that. No, I don't think so.
Do you think that was okay?
I don't think the idea was necessarily corrupt. I mean, maybe there's things I don't know about. You know what I'm saying?
But you're going to be raising money. Are you going to raise money from people you're regulating, or are you going to go on the democracy fund?
No, I'm going to do I mean, if I do a campaign right now, I'm still just exploring, but I'm planning on that this looks like it's successful. I would be doing the democracy fund.
Why?
I think that's one. I think the whole idea of not taking contractor money is super important. I think you've made that point. The other thing, I think the democracy fund has a couple goals. One is to get influential money in the city out of the politics. Two is to kind of level the playing field. Query whether it does that. And three is just like a general good government kind of, people's funded campaign. I want this to be a people's campaign. I want this to be something that the, public, broad speaking, is invested in. And so that is being part of the democracy fund is part of that. Now, I know some of the other people running don't think they can be competitive by doing the democracy fund.
But you get plenty of money. You get enough money. If you qualify, you have to prove you qualify. Now, if you only get your money from out-of-state consultants, then you're not going to qualify. You have to get local money. But they've kind of made it so you have plenty of money to run.
I do think they've made it that you have enough. I think you can run a competitive campaign even against an incumbent.
Because after a while, there's diminishing returns to the money. The question is, can you get your money out there? Like Linda McMahon spent $50 million twice running for Senate. She outspent Richard Blumenthal and Chris Murphy 5 or 10 to 1. But they had enough money.
Yep.
Or when Dan Malloy ran for governor with public money against self-funders, he was outspent 3 or 4 to 1, but he had enough money to get his message out.
Yeah, that's true. Yeah,
That's my ad, and you to come here for my ad.
you do have enough money to do it. Yes.
Liam Brennan, running exploratory candidate for mayor of New Haven, Democrat, right? Go for Democrat
Yes, sir.
nomination. So, Liam, what did you do? How long were you in the U.S. Attorney's office in New Haven?
U.S. Attorney's Office in New Haven, I was there for 7 years, I think.
Wow.
DOJ total, it was like 11 years.
Time goes so fast.
Time does go so fast.
Where'd you leave there for? I remember you leaving.
Yep, I left for New Haven Legal Assistance.
Oh, what'd you do there?
I was part of like the inaugural team of the Community and Economic Development Unit, which now is the Community Economic Justice Unit.
What did that mean?
We try to, legal assistance usually takes on just individual single clients. And the idea of this unit was to take on kind of like groups and do
Well, in the past, they used to do class action lawsuits, and the Republicans in Congress made sure that Legal Aid couldn't do class action lawsuits.
Mm-hmm.
But this wasn't actually lawsuits, right? This was like organizing.
This was like organizing, yes. So we had 2 community organizers who were part of the unit, and then we would like represent groups that were part of the unit. Now, just want to say, New Haven Legal Assistance can do class action lawsuits because they don't take the federal money. So the federal money all goes to state, statewide legal services, and so we have
and
an
they
arrangement.
can give that money
so,
too?
They can
That's
do
so
things that
interesting.
facilitate the New Haven Legal Assistance, so that New Haven. So it's a good situation for LAA that they can still do class action.
So how
law
long were you at
firms.
Legal Aid?
So I was there for a year. What we did there, I mean, the big
Jaywan Carter, who's backing one of your opponents, said, "Let's go. It's good to have options." Thanks for listening, Jaywan.
Thanks, Jaywan. We represented local groups. We represented the Dixwell Community Management
You
Team.
mentored a group that was fighting against this thing you're calling for right now today in this interview. There was a group that fought against easing zoning rules so that you could have more. In Dixwell, the Legal Aid was representing neighbors who successfully shot down a city effort to change zoning laws to have more mixed-use zoning and density.
So
They called it gentrification.
when I was there, we were part of the Room for All coalition, which fought for a lot of relaxation of zoning rules. If you I think have the whole proposal up on the website somewhere. We came up with, I think,
I remember Room for All.
Yeah,
Yep.
and so Room for All, that was like our big thing. And so we inclusionary zoning was one of those things, but a lot of these zoning changes also were part of.
And where do you stand on
Bill?
build? So as you know, Liam,
Yep.
there's a debate going on in America that often has left against left and right against right, which says one, and it's really a lot of theory. No one knows for sure. One idea is that every time you put on rules like inclusionary zoning and you have to set aside a bunch of affordable housing apartments when you build something, because everyone says all these apartments being built, although not all of them are for wealthy people, that in fact you're going to make it harder to have affordable housing. And they're talking about a theory about supply and demand in economics, that if you make it more expensive to build units, the private market won't build as many, so they won't build anything at all. But if you let people just build, the market eases itself out. So if you let people build a lot of market rate apartments on House Street, 1 block over on Dwight, you won't be able to charge as much for an existing apartment because there's plenty to go around.
Mm-hmm.
You know what I'm saying?
Yep.
But other people say that's theory. In real life, when you start building a lot of expensive housing somewhere, it kind of changes the culture and the market. More people come in, and people do end up getting priced out because people a block away say they're getting that much over there. I think and get much here. How do you start? Where are you on build versus put in requirements for affordable housing? And
I think I don't think it's an either or. I think the either or.
Politician.
No. I am completely serious about this though, Paul.
Okay.
Like I don't think normally this comes down in terms of like public funding for housing or build. You know, I think we need both. We need non-market housing here in New Haven.
No
and
one
the
ever
country
said you don't. Yeah.
Yeah, but I mean, some of the build people are all just about building.
Because the truth is, truly affordable housing, if you're not a slumlord, doesn't make you tons of money. It doesn't work. The only way really low-income housing rentals work in the private market is if you have rapacity as your business model.
Yeah,
You're siphoning off Section 8 rents and other kind of stuff.
Some of the build folks put down local advocates when they say, like, what's up with this development? Where's the stuff for us? And
But
like,
how could anyone be against, like, Beulah, where they're doing on
No, nobody's. Beulah is the crown jewel.
Right.
I mean, this is the
vacant lot
ideal.
where it's all going to be 100% affordable.
Right. I mean, what Daryl Brooks and his team have done there is just like incredible, and so I'm really, really hopeful that what that holds. But the truth is, though, in terms of building, we don't have enough apartments. We just straight up don't have enough homes for people. When you have a vacancy rate that's less than 2% in the city, there's not enough houses. And when there's not enough houses, homelessness goes up. Homelessness is a housing problem.
So what are some of your ideas? Now, we talked about zoning changes.
Zoning changes. I think we have excess city property as well. Like the city
Give me
owns
examples.
the city owns 830 properties across the city. We could put housing on some of those, but we also have, my main example, excess street space. We have street space that can be converted to housing, and this will help us hit multiple goals.
So give me some
First
examples
one,
of the street spaces.
I mean, if you just go around the corner and you look at Church Street coming up to the green from Gateway, it's huge. Do you look at a size of an apartment building, how many apartment buildings you could put on the existing street space, what's not being used by cars?
Like I'm trying to think where, like surface lots?
If you look, not even surface lots, I'm talking about the street, the pavement.
Oh, you think we should have narrower lanes?
Yep. And
like what we're going to do on State Street. Like you must like that project we're getting from the state on State
I do.
Street.
I mean, I've
So
looked
do
at
more
that
of
for
that,
years.
more squeezing the street closer.
Absolutely. And you will hit so many goals. You will hit housing goals, you will hit environmental goals, and you will hit safe
So
street
Church
goals.
Street
These
you would
are
make
all
narrower, and you would put, like I'm trying to think where you'd put it. It's really interesting
just
idea.
measure it across, and then measure apartment buildings or row houses, and you can fit so
But wouldn't
many.
it be in front of the existing ones?
Yep. And what you could do there, you have a sidewalk there. You could make it much wider and have like a greenway that could take pedestrians and bikers and scooters or whatever, and then have a narrower road because most of the time that road is empty. It's empty most of the time. And then you would have more homes. And this will help
give me
reduce
some other examples. This is so interesting.
This will reduce carbon emissions. This will boost safe streets, and it will provide housing, the most important thing.
So give me
that
some
we're
examples of street space and excess property.
You
Thinking of
do
schools?
it elsewhere. I mean, you just look at the same measurement I did on Church Street there, you can do elsewhere. I mean, even George Street, measured out George Street before.
Where?
You could put like down near, where George crosses, was that church? Where George crosses Church and then up to Temple, like you could actually bring it down to one lane and like you could fit row houses on the empty space, create a greenway in between them. And have a narrower street that takes
That's
the cars.
so interesting. And what about excess buildings? For instance, there are about, I think, 12 kids going to the West Rock
Yep.
I'm sorry, the Catherine Brennan Rogers Annex. Is that what you're thinking, that they're excess schools?
There's
Although
that-
you
you
do
could-
want smaller classes, though, so you can need more space.
Right. I mean, you could use school space. You could use other, there's
So
other
give me
properties.
examples. You've obviously thought about this. Because you mentioned 830. Obviously, there aren't 830 properties.
No,
But
many
like
of
the
those are
Armory,
empty lots.
You
the
think an
armory,
armory?
you'd have to do remediation there, but the armory. I mean,
There's environmental money right now with
I know.
DEP, and we have a New Haven.
Absolutely.
There. Yeah. Armory,
and then
where else?
the armory. I mean, it's not available anymore, but the community space in Trowbridge Square is now going to be turned into
Right.
something, which is great. But that was like prime spot and a really cute square that's not being used.
Yeah.
You could have either community space, which is great. I'm glad it's going to, but you could have housing as well. You
give
could
me
put
some-
housing on top
but you
of
said
spaces.
Okay, give me examples. Like you
There's
got 830.
the empty lots then too. The
Give me
city
some.
owns empty lots all over Newhallville, the Hill. If you go through, the city owns tons of empty lots where there used to be homes. Yet either hold on to them and turn them into homes, and you can own the property. I know there's a debate, and I haven't really not sure where I come down on whether to continue to own it or put it into private hands. But put homes there no matter what. Just and ease the zoning to do it, and the city invest in the homes, and you can make it affordable, and people can live there.
Well, I'm going to see some more of the public buildings. Would you have fewer school buildings? Make some of them?
I don't know. I'm not sure.
All right. Liam Brennan is exploring a search for mayor. So after the year at Legal Aid, where'd you go?
I was recruited to become the executive director at the Connecticut Veterans Legal Center.
And that was CVLF that you were saying later.
CVLC. Connecticut Veterans Legal Center.
You didn't ask my advice. I'm going to give you anyway. Earlier in the program, you talked about CVLC. Tell people what that is.
Yes, CVLC is the Connecticut Veterans Legal Center. It's a legal aid that provides free legal housing, free legal services to low-income, either homeless or at risk of homeless veterans or mentally ill veterans. Usually most of our clients were both, in partnership, in a medical legal partnership with the VA. And so we do basically legal aid services in conjunction with
And
doctors
how long
and
did you do
nurses.
that?
So I was there for about 3 years.
And then you got a really interesting job now that I do want to ask you about
Yep.
in Hartford.
Yeah.
You're sort of the sheriff of the cops, right?
So I'm the inspector. So from there, I became the inspector general in Hartford, where I look into complaints against the police and police misconduct. Yes.
Is it for a civilian review board?
It is for the civilian police review. It's their civilian review board. It's for the civilian police review
How
board.
long you been doing that?
I've been doing that for a year.
And tell me about that. What is that? what struck you there? Has it worked out the way you thought? Has it given you ideas how to be mayor and deal with? I mean, our civilian review board reconstituted and still not really doing much.
Yeah, it's given me tons of ideas, and I've been working with folks on and off here in New Haven to try and help the New Haven Civilian Review Board because of what I've learned there. I mean, I think the thing is, I got it because some people asked me to. There's a state inspector general as well, and some community groups asked me to apply for that. I didn't get it, but then the Criminal Justice Commission folks reached out to me and were like, hey, there's this job in Hartford doing the same thing or similar thing. You should really think about that. And then when I looked at it, it was this great opportunity because I do think criminal justice reform and restructuring the justice system is the civil rights issue of our time. Mm-hmm. And this is an opportunity to actually like work full time in criminal justice reform. And what they have is they have a civilian review board. But after 2020 and George Floyd, they decided that they didn't think the civilian review board was powerful enough. And what they did was they created an Office of Inspector General to actually investigate the cases and then bring them before the board.
Have you been doing that?
And that's what I've been doing.
How many cases you brought?
I mean, this last year we had, I'm trying to get a full total for 2022, but we had at least 66. I was working on case number 66 last
do you have a staff?
Earlier. I do. I have, there's 2 investigators I work with, and then there's a support staff person as well.
And what are you finding in these cases? Are you...
You know, some are not big, some are bigger.
Do you have subpoena power?
And let me just say, right now I'm speaking from my personal capacity, and I'm not speaking here on the show as the Inspector General.
You're not even an exploratory candidate. It's even a question of whether you are Lee and Brennan. Yeah.
But I am speaking about my own experiences, my thoughts about this system. I do have subpoena power, which is hugely important and very, very good that the city gave it to the board. Cities have the option to give their civilian review board subpoena power. We have kind of pretty much done it here in New Haven, and they made it a little fuzzy whether they did it or not, but they did. So this is where there is a gap between what the law says and what it is and actually effectuating it. So we're given subpoena authority. What does that mean? How do you use it? What does the subpoena look like? No one's ever written one of these subpoenas before. No one's ever seen one of them. So when I first wanted to use the subpoena, I went to Corporation Counsel. I was like, so we have subpoena authority. What's the subpoena? And he's like, I don't know. I think you create it. I mean, go for it. So literally, like, I looked at old federal grand jury subpoenas and created a subpoena for the Civilian Review Board. It's been upheld by the courts, so I feel good about that. But then you have to go into court to get it enforced if somebody doesn't follow it. Some people just see it and they follow it. Other people, we had a hospital say, we're happy to follow this, but since we've never seen it before, can you just get a court order and then we'll follow it? So I had to go to court and do that. Here in New Haven, we have a Civilian Review Board that, at least in theory, has subpoena power. But who's going to issue it for them? Who's going to write those subpoenas for them? They've been unloved. And I don't think so. They have been unloved and uncared for. They expect their board members to go down to the police department and do the investigations themselves and go through the documents and evidence themselves.
I thought they have a staffer, Emma Jones.
The board, they do have a staffer, but the board members are expected to go to the police department.
So what would you do different with our CRB?
I would put in an inspector general position. I would put in an inspector general position with that the CRB would act as the panel to hear the cases and to decide to make the ultimate decision.
But we don't have as much authority as Hartford's, right? They actually can't.
They can't initiate their own cases. That's another thing that Hartford did. It allowed the Civilian Police Review Board to initiate its own cases. So you think we should too? Absolutely. No question.
Now, what are you going to tell people who are concerned about, there was a backlash to defund the police, right? Mm-hmm. People are saying we want cops in our neighborhood. We have too few. We want to be protected. Mm-hmm. Are you going to be seen as sort of like the anti-cop candidate? How are you going to deal with crime?
I mean, hopefully I'm not going to be seen as the I'm not anti-anything. I am pro-reform.
Yeah. So tell me what reform would look like.
I do think that a really strong police accountability system that has an effective civilian review board with an inspector general is really important. I do think that we need to end the war on drugs, like completely. It's
Can
over.
A mayor do that?
Yes, he can, and I can tell you how. Nothing obligates us as a municipality, as a city, to engage in the federal government's or the state's continued war on drugs. That has failed for the last 50 years.
So would you say make no drug arrests, zero?
You can pull out. You can just say that is not our priority and that's not what we're going to do. And I will tell you that in 2020, the year 2020, okay, most of Connecticut has done this. Across Connecticut, we know that people use, distribute, sell drugs at the same rate across demographics, race, class, geography, all these things, right? In the state of Connecticut in 2020, less than 7% of all arrests were for drug offenses. In New Haven, do you know what the percentage was? 40% of our arrests were for drug offenses. We are over prosecuting our own residents for something that is something that is a
often
public.
that's the charge they slap on someone who's doing a lot of bad stuff. They catch him. They caught a guy recently with all his fentanyl. He's also doing gun crime and stuff. But
take
those are hard to make.
the fentanyl. They don't have to keep it. Take the fentanyl. But if he's got a gun, if he's doing gun crime,
Well, how do you take the fentanyl if you're not doing drug arrests?
I mean, if you caught him for something legitimate, you have to do it legitimate. You have to do actual investigations.
Well, would you get rid of drug investigations? Like, what would you do about fentanyl?
I would do. You could do investigations and take the fentanyl. I mean, you could do that. You can confiscate it. Nobody has a right to illegal stuff. But we don't need to be like putting people in the system for this anymore. Like, this is destructive. It is more. Can you
confiscate? I get your point. I'm those lines too. Can you confiscate without an arrest?
Yep, absolutely. Yes, you can.
Okay.
that's the answer. But the thing is, here's the thing. If you're concerned about violence, investigate and do those cases. What we had in 2021 here in this city, we had 25 murders, 22 of which went completely unsolved. Completely unsolved.
Well, it takes a while. You know that.
I do know it takes a while. I do know it takes a while. But what the answer we got is like, we don't have enough detectives. Reallocate people to investigate those cases. I mean, and the other thing along those lines, and here we can borrow kind of some of the philosophy from, one, we can borrow philosophy from every areas and apply them here. So if you look at drugs, what we've done with nicotine and how we've been able to like regulate out and like address, nicotine addiction has been really successful. And it's been done without putting anyone in jail, without labeling them with a felony conviction for the rest of their lives.
See, now the first thing people are going to say is some people who don't think along your lines are going to say, you're just going to let people run wild selling illegal drugs. Nope.
No.
Tell me about it.
Because they don't have a right to sell the drugs. If you have somebody selling the drugs like on the green or whatever, you go up and you take the drugs if you actually have them.
Now you can do that without an arrest.
Yes.
You could just
because it's an illegal
the cop
substance.
can just seize it.
Yes. I mean, if they have probable cause or reasonable suspicion to engage that
or
person,
if you're
you have
stopping
to
a car for another reason, you find the drugs, you could take the drugs.
Yeah.
But you're saying, but don't stop the car.
I also think police should be taken out of traffic stops, but we'll get there for a moment.
That is an interesting issue. That is an interesting issue.
Yes, but if I may, similarly, we obviously have a gun violence problem here. And what we know is that the availability, the nearness, the just like accessibility of guns makes gun violence much more likely. If people don't have access to them or don't have them nearby, they're less likely to use them. And this is similar to what we see in like safe streets campaigns where, for a long time, people like thought like traffic enforcement was the most important thing. But really, we found that you can like get a lot of the ends and even get better results if you like redesign spaces and you narrow roads, you put in speed bumps, you make.
So tell me about gun violence.
So
we're
gun
running out of
violence,
time.
we have absolute no vision in the city for a municipal gun regulation, and we need one. A municipal gun regulation.
Don't we need state? We need state enabling legislation.
No, we don't. We have a lot of police powers in which we are able to do that.
Give me examples.
Well, the police grants. The state legislature already grants us authority for health and safety to create local ordinances, and there's even the case, New Haven case. Kind of the Supreme Court of the state upheld that we have like very broad authority under our police powers, unless the state has specifically said we can't do it.
So what would you specifically do?
I would specifically say that we have to register and track all guns in the city. And then if somebody knows of a gun that is not registered and tracked, they can inform authorities and that can be taken. And that is going to like incentivize more cooperation from people than if people think that contacting authorities are going to get their loved ones arrested. That we need to like totally
so not arrest the people for having the gun, just take the gun?
If all it is knowing that there's an illegal gun, yes.
So not arrest people for owning an illegal gun.
Just take the gun at first. Arrest people for
other crimes. So in other words, you're saying people more likely to give you information about a gun to be taken from someone they care about if they think they won't be arrested.
There are models out there that we can use to kind of do this at a municipal level, and we have much more authority than.
One more quick example, because this is really interesting to me.
One more quick example on what? I'm sorry.
How you could do the guns, what powers we could have with guns. Because I'm always told by the police their hands are tied. They can't even say no to someone they don't want to give a gun permit to because it's such strict regulations, state and federal.
I think that is, we have we are used to thinking that we need the state's permission to do everything, but actually we've been granted a lot more power.
So give me another example. So you think we could do with guns?
I'm not sure right now, but
Okay.
I'll come up.
Well,
with one
Leon,
for
I
you.
want you to come back because you're so interesting to talk to.
I
You're
would
just
love to come back,
popping
Paul.
with ideas.
I would love. Thank you so much for having me here. And I think the most important thing to know is that we don't have to accept the city as it is, the city government as it is. We have the power within us to change it, and we can go out and make the changes that we want to see in our community, and that's what we're going to hope to do.
All right. Liam Brennan, exploratory campaign for mayor of New Haven as a Democrat. When are you going to decide whether or not you're a candidate?
Assuming everything goes ahead, I mean, I would expect early February, mid-February would probably be likely.
It was really nice to have you on.
Thank you so much
You're
for
a
having
lot
me,
of
Paul.
fun.
It was
I'm
great
so
to be here.
surprised all these years you've never been on, given all the stuff you're involved in. We'll have you back no matter what.
Thank you so much.
Liam Brennan on WNHC Dateline New Haven. Thanks to Harry Dross, our station manager and producer, gets us on all the platforms in the multiverse. We're going to take it out with the Afro-Semitic Experience performing I Wish I Knew How It'd Feel to Be Free from the Groose CD, A Plea for Peace. This is Paul Bass inviting you to fly free with us all day and all night long on WNHH, New Haven's home for community radio.